One myth that had a huge impact on me was the myth of Psyche. And I later discovered how much that myth influenced many stories that I was told as a child. The story of Cinderella, the story of Snow White, the Beauty and the Beast, and the Sleeping Beauty. These were all archetypes that I was told that to be a good woman, a good daughter, and a good wife, you had to look like these women. And these women in generally were quite docile, self-sacrificing, very naive and gentle. And also in those stories, other types of women were often punished. And the ones that were punished were the ones who wanted power. And so I was told that if you're a woman and you want power, you will end up like an old witch alone and dead. And also the other dynamic was the dynamic between women. You had to expect that relationship between women were one with jealousy and envy, and so to distrust women. And later on, as time passed, I saw that how much these stories trickled into my subconscious that I had to be a good wife, a good daughter, a good mother, and how much it limited me. And so a lot of my healing journey and transformational journey was not to also react the other way of like, okay, I now will go full on the other direction, but was to integrate and transcend that part, to have a choice about it. And we can't have power over something we're unaware about. We can't be conscious and choose if this story owns us and our behavior versus us owning a story that we were transmitted by our society. In the story of Eve, you have it that the whole world's basically misery is due to her sin of having trusted the snake and wanting to have knowledge, and she corrupted Adam. And that's very strong to tell a little girl that, we women are responsible for the world's sin. And so I then did a ritual to embrace these two archetypes, to actually also embrace the fact that I'm not a perfect woman, I'm not a perfect mother, and I do want knowledge as a woman. I want to have access to knowledge the way men do, because for a very long time, knowledge was not accessible as women the way it is today. And so for me, there was something powerful to look at these stories and try to see what they were telling me, what part I might want to kind of like integrate and transcend and go beyond, what part were really teaching me something that could help me navigate as my own journey as a woman. And so the third story that had a huge impact on me is the story of Tethys. And so Tethys is a goddess, and she gave birth to her mortal son, which is Achilles. And she has to deal with the fact that she knows her son will die. And for a long time, many women had to deal with that, because if you gave birth to a son, your son will likely go to war and die, and you might be alive while your son passes away. And recently, we had a long period of peace. And so for many women, we didn't have to deal with that reality. And when seeing the amount of crisis that was coming towards us in the world, with the climate crisis and gradually the war that appeared, I was so anxious because I just given birth to my son who was 1. And I was like, he might one day have to go to war. And the horror of being a mother, having to see your son sent to war. And actually, looking at this myth helped me to understand that what I'm going through is not unique to me. Many women before me had to go through that. And through her story, it can help me navigate what I'm going through emotionally and find some answers. And so there's huge power in myth in all these different layers of how we can be aware of them and choose which parts we want to keep and leave, and when do we want to maybe sometimes step into those archetypes, and some myths that we've forgotten about that can help us navigate a difficult period in our lives, and and reimagine what myths do we really need to go tomorrow.